The next item on the agenda is the city of Ypsilanti wants to bring their recyclables to the compost site. And Karen and I met with the city manager, and they have the recycle center in Depot Town has to be moved. And it has to be moved because they built it on grant land, which is something we did when we put a cell tower on grant land. So they have to cease operation, and they were notified 4 years ago, and they never did anything about it. But now they're under the gun because they will not give them any more grants until they find an alternative to the recycling. So when we met with them, we discussed having a separate recycle container that they would pay for. They would pay for the disposal and processing of it. And then we had suggested half of the employee costs at the gatehouse. So to do an official agreement, we could have one drafted up, by the attorney if the board's interested in it's really helping them out so they can get more grants. So they talked about having, it's not all their residents, it's the apartment complexes that do not have a place to recycle. So,
Madam Chair.
if there's willingness to proceed, we can bring it back at the next meeting with an actual agreement to do so.
Madam Chair. I am super in favor of this, and I'm just wondering if we could also maybe leverage borrowing their street sweeper 2 more times a year or something. I'm serious. Right?
Yeah.
Why not?
We could ask.
It's a favor. We might as well ask.
We can definitely ask them, for sure. I agree.
Can you explain the half payment or whatever you mentioned there?
Well, 50% of the employee costs at the gate attendant, the people bringing in, because when you pull in there,
Right.
there's a gate attendant.
For us, currently,
Yes,
right? They're not going to put anybody there.
no. So it actually,
So can our employee handle the extra workload?
yeah, they said they just have to, the key is the city residents to go over to their recycle bin so that we can track it and bill them appropriately. We talked to them, we met with them.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. I'm interrupting.
With people from another municipality coming in, is there any liability concerns? If they were to slip and fall or hurt themselves at their own recycling, obviously they would go to
Come
that
in now,
municipality.
like they come in now. Like
Oh, I know.
other communities come in now,
Other communities do.
like Superior
And so all we're asking them to do is cover half the cost of the employee we have there. They're going to put their own bin there, and that's it.
that's it.
I would ask for the street sweeper as well.
Yeah, maybe we could waive the cost of the gate since we already paid for that, and then just say, instead of that, we want to use your sweeper 4 times a year.
Yeah. I'm not,
Did I just,
Or I would ask for both.
did I just, Madam Chair?
yes.
Monica? Trustee Rowe Sterile Rowe just said that, but right now we get the street sweeper, if I have it correct, from Washtenaw County Road Commission, maybe 2 times a year. Probably need at least 6 street sweeps within the course of the summer. So I would actually up that to 4. If possible, we can ask that for negotiations. I don't know.
Mr. Winters?
They still owe us $24,000,
Well,
So, that's still on the table as well.
and I don't mean to sound like the Ebenezer of the group, but we've helped in the past with roads. We've been refused to accept help for roads. We just recently helped with Emmerich Street, which is not in our township at all, but our residents access it. I don't mind helping them here. I just think it's a little more valuable than that.
Well, if there is support to bring it back to the next board meeting, then we can do that. And then I'll ask them, we ask them for a street sweeper all the time.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
is this just the city manager that is requesting this, or has the city council actually requested this?
We met with the city manager. And
one of
the
employees.
Rutherford pool also brought it to our attention. The mayor sent an email. But Stan Curtin, who is their director of public,
Works.
yeah.
Well, I would agree with the attorney. I mean, we're still owed $24,000. We've asked in the past for their assistance with road sweeping, and we're turned down. And again, I don't mind helping them, but it just seems like it needs to flow both ways a little better.
Okay, we'll work on drafting an agreement and bring it back. That's okay. It is more helping a neighbor than money or, I agree. It's just to help them out. They're in a bind, to be honest. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the snow ordinance, so we'll bring that back. And the first, whoa, just a minute.
Everybody's got them. Is that what you sent us today? Yeah, they all got them.
We make copies.
Yeah.
Stan?
Again, I just had brought this back to open the discussion, so at least we could have some resolution to it one way or the other, to ask for input, constructive criticism on any changes or any suggestions. Maybe we move in full, we move in part, or we don't move at all. I'm okay with any of those. I just, again, just brought it so it would generate discussion amongst the 7 of us, or 6 tonight. I know there's a lot of strong feelings on both sides, and I certainly appreciate that. And but I guess I'm just, again, putting it there to see if there are suggestions on how to change it, whether to implement it or not, implement it in full, partial implementation, or just to bypass it and say at this time we're not doing anything with it. I just think we need to at least give some discussion to it in one way or the other.
And I had discussed this before about starting it in the business district to see how we can handle any enforcement of it and, like work out the kinks and to see how labor intensive it is and what does it take to enforce it. That's my biggest concern, is that you can have ordinances, but you can't enforce it. I do know at Neighborhood Watch, I've been there when Steve was there, and I've been there when Ms. Kaiser was also there, and, both of them have gotten a lot of signatures, and you would probably find that throughout. The biggest concern that I have heard, which is what I heard before, is ice removal is very hard on people, and they say, well, you should treat it like grass. I know people who are on disability, Social Security, they can mow a grass, but they cannot shovel. So I don't know exactly, how to address that, but I would like to see how we would address it with the business district, to see how we implement it. Yeah. Mr. Alden.
I think Mike would agree with this, based on our past professions, that if you put rules or laws or ordinances into place and you can't enforce it, it really hurts the credibility of the enforcement unit. In our case, law enforcement. In this case, if we put anything, whether it's snow removal or any other ordinance we have, if we put them into place and you can't enforce it, it really tears at the credibility not only of that enforcement unit, but probably the entire municipality. So I get it with the snow removal versus lawn mowing. I push my mower, I cheat. Sometimes I sit on one and ride it. I can't ride a shovel to clear snow. So I get it. And I'm okay as the person that brought it forward if we want to start it on a smaller scale to see how it works. I think that's a better alternative than just not doing anything at all for anyone. And maybe if it's a business model that starts, to see if it's even feasible for a municipality to enforce it, I'm okay with that.
Madam Chair, I would agree with you and Stan that I think it would be a good idea to just We could even do something like, you know how we do trials of different
Pilot,
things? Yeah, a pilot, there you go. And, you know, maybe just pick like one business district, try it out for this or winter season, see how it goes, see how enforcement works. And then, you know, if it's favorable or we run into any issues, then later on we could implement it for the rest of the township as well, the other business districts, so.
And
We could do-
the challenge is not any of our districts have 100% sidewalk either.
Yeah,
You know, there's so many, and we're doing a walkability study now.
My only concern on picking one area would be if your business is in that area and mine's not. So I think if we're going to do it on a business basis, we might have to do it as an entire township.
Yeah, I hope my mic is on. I have, and I'm glad this is brought up because I know the resident has came many times in order to try and see if we can bring it up. But I'll be honest, I have a lot of questions. And they are similar to Supervisor Stumbo's questions in regards to enforceability. I know there was some discussion, if I have it correct, October 8, 2016, that surrounded around enforceability of the board. I wasn't on the board at that time, but I was able to read the information. So that's question number one. Question number two would be, yeah, and grass, and I understand that we do have a grass ordinance, but snow is different than grass. And so when we're asking the elderly to possibly have to go out and shovel their sidewalk, which is actually not their sidewalk. It's actually, the sidewalk is actually, most of the time, the township sidewalk, within 48 hours, they may not be able to do that. And then here's the other question. If they're not, then who does it fall on? Does it fall on the township? I know there was some prior discussion in regards to the work session minutes between October 18th and November 15th, questioning, number one, who would be contracted to do this? Would it be the township? Would we have to get a contractor? Is that an increased cost? So that's another question that I have. Number 5 is just basically what Trustee Eldridge said. If you have ordinance and it's not really enforceable because you cannot enforce it, then what's the point of having the ordinance? Number 6, if it is like a pilot program, which I know actually Supervisor Stumbo talked about that work session minutes, I think in November 15, 2016, a pilot program where it is one business district or something similar. I guess my question would be if they would not complying, are we going to do any type of fines and fees? Because I'm not sure if that would be fair either. So those are my questions. I have a lot more questions on this than I have answers.
Other comment?
Madam Chair.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes, I would say, I guess similar to remarks that I heard from the trustee Scott Martin and Mike Martin a few years ago. It is hard to plan, it's hard for residents to plan for snow and ice removal. It's easier to plan for grass, that's why we have the grass ordinance. People can plan a week, 10 days, maybe even 2 weeks at, max. It's going to be difficult for especially a lot of residents who are out of town. We have a lot of snowbirds here in the township, and it would be unfair for them to try to make those arrangements, I believe. However, I think businesses, I think that would be a good pilot program to start and see how that goes. But I don't think it would be fair for a lot of residents who are not able to, whether it be financial or physical.
Okay, other, Clerk Rowe?
I just, there's a lot of what ifs, but I think, I I would support, I don't believe in the 3 days or 2 days, but what we have going on now is people either shovel their walks or they don't. Most of the people who shovel it are the senior citizens. If you look in the older neighborhoods, and I see my friend out there smiling, in the older neighborhoods, that was like part of the way that they were raised or brought up. It's usually a lot, not all of them, but it's the younger people, and the rentals are the ones that don't shovel their walk. So they figure out a way to do it, whether they hire someone to do it or they do it themselves, but folks do. But the problem is when you never shovel your walk for the entire winter, and then it almost becomes, the snows that we have, impassable. And so I think that an ordinance that said that you got to shovel it residential within a week, and I think businesses should be able to do it in 24 hours. They're open all the time, and I think that that's something that would be doable to make it work. We are one of the fattest states in the nation. We have long winters in Michigan, and people, really need to get out. And the people that you do hear that want this, I'm not sure about everybody that comes to the board meetings, are people who are walkers and runners. And then I also think, and I see them on Ford Boulevard, and I see them on Hunter Avenue, because they live over there somewhere, and I'm sure there's other parts. And it's just, to me, just really sad that if you're in a wheelchair, you can't go down the sidewalk in the winter, and you go down the roads in the winter. And I just really think that for people who are differently abled, who want to get out and want to enjoy the outdoors or go somewhere just like I do, that not to clear off the sidewalks within a week. And I'd be even willing to go longer, but I think people they either shovel them or they don't, and it becomes, just inches and inches and inches and inches on top of inches, and you literally have to go into the road. You're running or you're walking, and you get so far down, and then you got to go on the road because that person didn't clean it off all winter. And I just think, and I do think that it's enforceable, and we said that in terms of the same way we do grass, it would be complaint-driven, and that we could have a company on board, just like we do for grass, that if after a week, they go out and they give an NOV, and maybe we give them another 3 or 4 days to get it cleaned up after that. But then if they don't clean it up at that point, then we could send our contractor out just like we do with grass. It's no cost to the township. And frankly, the ordinance officers are not as busy in the winter. We all know that they're bombarded once the weather breaks. And so I don't think we have to add new staff. And so I would just really, because I think it's hard to pick out a business district. So, because even in some of the streets, there's still residential homes. I'm trying to think, do we do Michigan Ave, but there's residents on that? Do we do Ecorse Road? Do we do Washington? Like, it just becomes really hard because you're still going to affect, some homeowners in there. But maybe that's good enough, because then you could do a pilot and see what those homeowners think about it on those streets. But I would be in favor of doing a township-wide one that's much more, gives people more time. I do know that snow is, I agree with Trustee Wilson, and I've thought about that a lot. If you're on vacation for a week, and a lot of people go out at Christmas and stuff, you should, you can make plans and you can contract someone, but if you don't have the money to do that and it's something that you want to do, I think the issue is trying to get them open, not immediately in 24 hours, but at least make it so that throughout the winter, that if people want to use the sidewalks, they can use the sidewalks for me, so.
Any other comments?
Thank you. I just had one. I know when Attorney King and I talked about it several years ago, snow is different than grass. With grass, you can go out and try to recoup your cost through the state laws. Snow, you cannot. So if you...
Put it on the tax bills, right? You can't put it on the tax bill.
Right. So there's no way we could recoup it if we had to go out and contract a removal company. We couldn't go back and recover that cost should it never be paid by the homeowner or the property owner.
Madam Chair, I would have a couple of questions just to follow up. And I know it was a lot of what ifs, but there was a lot of what ifs basically in the work session minutes of November 18th, 2016, and also November 15th, 2016. But for, just to say it is a week, and there is, I don't know. I'm just going to say, maybe it's 200, 200 homeowners that have not shoveled the snow. There is a cost factor associated with whether it's a contractor, I'm assuming it's going to be a contractor, or if there's township employees that's going out to take care of the snow of 200 homeowners that did not comply. So what does that cost? Next, and it is another what if, but it's a question that needs an answer. Next thing that I would have is, okay, so what are they going to be fined? And what would be the fine? So, I mean, those questions have to be answered, and I'm just speaking for this trustee, in order to be able to draft or even come up with an ordinance. And I'll be honest, I'm concerned about the difference between, as Trustee Eldridge said, between grass and snow. And I'm concerned about the fact that most homeowners don't own the sidewalk in front of their house.
Madam Chair,
Yes, trustee.
just to piggyback off of your comments, Trustee Wilson, or, oh my gosh, Ross Williams. I think that, like, I totally understand the what if that many places were reported, but, like, it's all complaint driven, so, like, I don't know the numbers for grass complaints, they're probably
can get 'em.
high, but, like, I don't know if 200 and, like, one snow, I don't know if, but who knows, but we also would never be able to gather that data without, like, trying it somewhere, whether it's in business or residential. And then, I don't know, I know, Stan, you did a lot of research. Do you know off the top of your head what other communities fine? Is it like $30 or so?
Most of them just follow whatever their grass ordinance is. They just follow the same fining system, so.
So it would be the cost of,
This,
Cost of the services
Going up,
rendered,
yeah.
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 Do they do that, Stan? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Do the other places shovel it for them and then give them a fine, and they use the fine to cover the cost?
There's some did, some didn't. Yeah, there was no consensus way of how any of them did it.
when I looked into the business commercial
Yeah.
snow removal earlier, the attorney's office said that you have to go to court. So you have to write a ticket and you go to court and you ask for, fines and the cost for the removal at the 14B court. That's where it would go.
Yeah, that's kind of
Whereas the snow ordinance is state law, and you have to, after June 1st, you post it on the door. If they don't mow it within the grass, and if they don't mow it within 24 hours, then we can have someone mow it, and we can put it on the tax bill. So in 15, is that what you read? 15 or 16, when we started this, I was in support of it, but when I talked to the residents at Neighborhood Watch, they were not. And that, I was surprised, to be honest. And most of the seniors do go there, and most of them do it. But they were just concerned about having another law that is, punitive, because we adopted so many ordinances in the past. But if there was, and my goal at one time was, wouldn't it be nice if we could get an area just agree to do it? So a lot of the associations require you to do it. So a lot of the new homeowners, they require you to do that anyways. And I was, if it would be great if we could just get people to actually do it, or help out their neighbor when they have. But when it was so heavy this past winter, and I hire someone to do mine, I know Lisa does too, because we use the same one, and they could not get to me. He said, we can't, Brenda, I can't clear it up. I'm too busy. I have too many clients ahead of you. So now a week, I think, would give you enough time to get someone, to do that. But when it was that thick and that heavy,
It's all melted anyways, 9 times out of 10, so.
it was pretty bad last winter. I don't know, for some reason, that snow was bad. But, if it was a week, well, Lord, it would melt. You're right. That would not be as restrictive as what Stan had proposed. And the ice is a big It's hard to get, it's really hard to get ice off.
So does anyone, do we have any sort of consensus about trying it in a business area or no?
I would like to try it in the business area and just see, how do we enforce it? How much time does it take? And
So what does that mean? Do we pick a street like Washington or something?
the business corridors, yeah, Washtenaw, Ecorse, East Michigan Avenue, Huron Street, yeah.
Well, I think you might want to ask one of the attorneys. I don't think you can just pick and choose businesses. I think it has to be all or none.
I said,
I thought you said corridors, because not every business we have is on a corridor per se. So.
yeah, we can, the draft ordinance that I was working on actually listed out the corridors.
So you don't, Madam Chair, so you don't think it should be all businesses? You think it should be corridors?
We did the business corridors, that's how it was. But, I mean, it can be whatever the board likes. That's just how I was looking at it in March.
Madam Chair, if the businesses, which most businesses want to keep their sidewalks shoveled, because
Right.
if not, they won't get business.
They do their parking lot, not their sidewalk.
Okay, yeah, but they will, yeah, got your point.
Yeah.
If they did not comply, would there be a fine or a fee associated with that?
Yes. Yeah, it would be an ordinance that said if you didn't do it in so many hours or days or whatever the board decides, then they would write a notice, a ticket, and they'd have to go to court. We paid to have it removed, then they would have, our prosecutor would ask for them to pay the amount of it costs to remove it.
And then if it's a pilot program, within the pilot itself, and I don't know if it's 90 days or if, a winter period, to see, I guess you could say, the compliance with doing this type of ordinance, would there be fines and fees within the pilot period?
You mean it for residential?
No, I'm talking about for businesses. So I heard something that we try it as a pilot and then basically implement it, I guess, based on the results of the pilot. So I don't know, maybe I didn't hear that correctly, or?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I guess just to clarify, when what I was trying to explain is during the pilot process, we would actually implement the proposed ordinance for whatever area. So you would implement it and then at the end of, that season or year, go back and just
Review it.
See if there's any kinks in the thing, maybe we can't enforce it, maybe we don't have enough staff, maybe no one was complained about, just to look back and say what was wrong with our process.
Okay.
Did it work? How did it work? What could be better?
Okay, and then I guess basically, I guess I'll ask you, during that pilot period, with compliance, there it is, would there be fines and fees imposed on the businesses?
Yeah.
Ordinance, yeah. Our goal is compliance anyways, our goal is not fines, but, it's, and the ordinance, Karen, the ordinance department is still pretty busy because we're doing rentals for apartments
No,
and
that's
stuff
right.
now too.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I think ordinance calls go way down. Can I ask you a question? So if we did because I didn't see the list of the corridors. So
I didn't bring it.
No, I'm just saying, I'm assuming Washtenaw and Ecorse is in there. But, so if you're doing the corridor, so we're going to do residential on that corridor too, so then we'll have feedback on both residential and businesses? Because wouldn't make any sense to make the businesses do it if you're not going to do the whole entire street, Is that the thought behind it?
But when I think of Washtenaw, I don't know what residential, you talking about apartments maybe? or-
I don't know, I'm just through that out, or Ecorse Road, I think there's houses on Ecorse Road, isn't there? Some?
I don't
You're not-
I don't
some up
think
front.
so.
And where else were you thinking? What other streets? Ford Boulevard would, I mean,
I think it's just easier if you eliminate the word corridor and say businesses. Because Holmes Road is not necessarily a corridor, so are you exempting Holmes Road businesses?
Right, but
And if you are, I would ask why.
Right?
because there's a
really,
gas
to
station.
me, it makes absolutely no sense to have a business and then you're not going to do the rest, so the people, I don't understand that. Because businesses, like you said, most of them probably do it anyway.
They don't do sidewalks. They do their driveway and they don't do sidewalks. That's one thing. Of course, I think we lack sidewalks too, and we have a lot of gaps, and later on the agenda, there's a walkability study, I think they call it, what do they call it? Yeah. And that'll help us identify it, and I mean, I'm sure businesses would probably be willing to do it if we had sidewalks in front of them too. Like, Washtenaw is really bad. It's about this much, this wide, and grass is up in it, so and as we do this, are we supposed to do and that's what residents asked me, are we going to do our bike path? And I thought that was and that's a good question that we need to discuss. And if we're going to have other people do it, then do we have to do our bike path? And
Sorry.
Grove Road in particular was brought up. So
We should do, sorry, Madam Chair.
yes.
I think we should do our bike paths. That's been a complaint for a long time, and since we're doing this pilot, I mean, we should also think about getting our bike paths cleared. Obviously, that is a township cost at that point. And then as far as, I was thinking with what Clerk Rowe was saying about you have a business in the middle of a street and then the rest of the residents aren't required, I think that it's okay for this pilot, that's what we're calling it, a pilot, just to see, can we at least, gather some data. So we want to see how we can approach the residents later, possibly. So I don't see it being a problem with targeting something in the middle of the street. Also, what Trustee Eldridge said, I think it should be all businesses and not necessarily business corridors, because then it doesn't seem fair. And so that's all. Thank you.
Yes,
Ms. Chiva.
Chair. My only comment, which I actually agree with Clerk Rowe on this one, is the Holmes Road, great example. I guess if you take out the word corridor, maybe at that point in time, you don't have that same issue, but, there are some houses on Holmes Road.
That wasn't in the first
yeah.
list. That wasn't in
Yeah.
the initial list.
Right, okay, got you. Thank you for that.
Could
I
be
guess,
added, but.
yeah, maybe it's just me, and that's okay if it is. But I still personally have reservations about implementing something like this. I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record.
I'm sorry, reservations about what?
Even if it's businesses, the businesses would be subject to, as an ordinance would say, fines and fees. And it's almost like, okay, well, businesses can, but residential, you're fine. And I'm still having issues with the fact that the sidewalk is technically not owned by the homeowner or the business. So that would be my reservations.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
question for a business or a homeowner. Someone slips and falls on sidewalk. Where does the liability fall? On that business or homeowner? Is that correct? Who's it?
No, it's in the road right away. The liability of a sidewalk, if there's a 2-inch trip hazard that we are aware of, then the township is liable for it. But we have to know about it, so people report it, and then every year we go out and fix the trip hazards as reported. As far as slip and falls, I mean, I don't, Attorney
How does slip and falls work? I knew about the trip hazard, but
because it's in the road right away.
I think between the Michigan legislature and the Supreme Court, they've almost done away with a lot of the traditional slip and
I
fall.
can't hear you, Doug. Can you talk in the
Sorry?
microphone?
Okay. Between the Supreme Court and the Michigan legislature, they pretty much have done away with a lot of the what used to be called the slip and fall case, especially on sidewalks, if it's, they have what they call the open and obvious defense. And so you still want to encourage people to reduce ice because it does cause a lot of significant injuries. But I think some of the liability has been tilted much more favorably now for the governmental bodies that are traditionally responsible for the sidewalks. You'll see a lot of city sidewalks says no winter maintenance. And so they put people on notice as best as they can. There's no winter maintenance being provided. Even I think on the township pathways, they'll say no winter maintenance. But I think the open and obvious defense has gone a long ways towards reducing a lot of these traditional cases that we used to see when we first started practicing.
Yeah.
In regards to the time of year when there's no snow or ice, those sidewalks, even the 2-inch rule has now been pretty much eliminated through the open and obvious defense. So, City of Detroit was complaining they were spending out millions of dollars a year in lawsuits on sidewalks, and so they changed the law in Lansing at the time to give municipalities the right to assert the open and obvious defense. So, being the victim of falling down on a sidewalk in the city, I can tell you firsthand there's a lot of bad sidewalks out there. And you do want to try and, some of the worst injuries we saw years ago in the township, and before we implemented the township's very aggressive plan to replace sidewalks, some of the worst injuries we would see would be young kids on bicycles, and as they would go hit a bad sidewalk section, go across the handlebars and have some horrific injuries. So, you know, it's not pleasant to watch how it's been played out over the years in regards to people falling on sidewalks. It's very dangerous.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just have one last comment on it.
Trustee Eldridge?
As I've listened to all these comments, to me, we talk all the time about the broken windows theory and quality of life, and we take residents to circuit court because their property's not up to par. We take businesses to circuit court because it's not up to par. But yet we're having a difficult time just trying to implement a pilot to ask businesses to simply shovel the snow on the property that services our residents. And we're concerned about that for some reason. But we take businesses to court because they have too many cars parked on their lot. That doesn't create any hazard for a resident in this township other than a visual. But yet we're worried about enforcing an ordinance to ask them to remove snow and ice that could create a problem health-wise for residents. I guess I just find it a little bit surprising that we're concerned about placing enforcement rules on a business as a pilot for our community when we routinely take businesses and residents to court time and time again for things that don't impact anybody other than the ones that live on that very property. Here we're trying to impact people to make the walkways safer, the entryways safer for residents. I just find it a little bit surprising that we're having such a difficult time with this when we go to court routinely for other things that don't impact the general well-being of a great number of people. That's my only thing. And I'm okay if we just say, let's try this to see how it works in the business owned properties. Not a corridor, but businesses. And if we don't want to do that, I'm okay not doing that as well, but I just find it surprising.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would support just what Trustee Eldridge has said, and I would be really interested if, I heard you said you were already working on an ordinance, and if you would, you know, maybe next meeting, just bring it back to the board and, like, let's look at it, read it, and decide, you know, vote on whether or not we want to implement it as a pilot in the business areas, just to do something. We've been talking about this for a while, years.
I concur.
Years. Thank you. And thank you for your work, both Stan and Brenda, on this.
So the direction is to bring back the one that we had been proposed draft ordinance, and we can send it around for the business areas or business. However you want to word it is fine. Yeah, this is a difficult issue. It always has been.
Madam Chairman, can I say a couple of things?
Give your name and address,
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry.
Yeah.
Stephen Hudak, 553 Malbet Street. And I just wanted to quickly respond to a few things everybody said. That might help. Packard Avenue is a really good example of a road that's a corridor or a major road, if you want to call them that has businesses, vacant land, and private residences. So just because of that, and that's not usually shoveled. And so that would be a good example for...
Good example of how not to do it, or?
No,
Richard?
to not call it businesses, but to call it major roads, so that all of Packard gets shoveled then. Vacant land, private
okay.
residences, and
All right, I understand now, I'm sorry.
businesses.
I got it.
Last time you went through this, you had a subcommittee that worked on this, that ironed things out. And I would wonder if you're going to do it this time, and if I could be on it. So, I have lots of information. I talked to many of the municipalities around here, and they all have one that works. So I don't understand why it's not enforceable. Maybe you just need a few answers to that. Contractors' work, everybody pretty much uses them. Other municipalities recover costs. Ypsilanti Township sues the resident. The other ones put it on their taxes. So there's a few things I'm not understanding. Maybe someone could explain all this to me at some point, probably not now. I didn't understand what the state law has to do with any of this. Maybe I'm missing something there.
Steve, we couldn't hear that last statement.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, state law.
Yeah, I'm not understanding what state law has to do with a sidewalk snow removal ordinance. So maybe someone at some point could explain that to me, unless I missed, or I...
There's a state, that people like to compare grass, mowing of grass,
Oh.
to snow removal. There's a state law.
Oh, the grass is a state law.
Correct.
Okay, and
Correct.
this isn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The question about who owns the sidewalk, I called someone in the township, and I just forgot, and I couldn't find my notes, who I talked to. But the lady who finally I got to, who knew the answers of who owns the sidewalks, I had to give her an address first, because she said they're all different. But on the other hand, that probably doesn't have anything to do with the owner's responsibility to maintain the sidewalk. All the other townships around here deal with that, and it apparently works. So if someone could look into that a little bit more and then just get this out of the way, that would move us ahead. I'm not sure who that ought to be. Okay.
Sidewalks are our responsibility. Is that what you're asking?
No, I understand some of you aren't sure who owns the sidewalks. And
No, it doesn't matter who owns them.
but that's what I thought too. It doesn't matter. It's just that if you have a sidewalk, no matter who owns it, you're responsible for maintaining it, and that would be dealing with snow as well, should this pass. Okay. So those are the things I wanted to add. I hope maybe we could get together, or some of you can get together. I have a lot of information, and if you want to do just the major roads or corridors, that might be a good idea. Do it for the whole township, and it doesn't have to be a pilot. It could just be a good attempt. Read the other ordinance from the other municipalities, and if something doesn't work right, just modify the ordinance. So, thanks for listening.
Thank you. All right, so the next item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
May I have the opportunity to speak to the board on
Yes.
snow removal? I am opposed to it. There's always one person in the neighborhood who is going to call, and I have done a lot of canvassing. A lot of people are opposed to it, and you talk about some of these sidewalks along Hewitt. The sidewalk is supposed to belong to the township. They come along, the county comes along, township sidewalk, county puts the ice
Snow,
on the sidewalk, so then the homeowners or whoever is responsible for taking it off. We have survived almost 50 years that I've lived here without any problems. The divots in the sidewalk, I have pictures in the back. There's a lot of people that don't have sidewalks, this gentleman included. So is the township going to give all these people sidewalks so that we are all on the same playing field? There are pictures of people who have sidewalks. The approach from the driveway, from the street to the sidewalk is only as wide as that approach. That person is going to have to keep that sidewalk. There are approaches from the road up to what's supposed to be the sidewalk, but there's no sidewalk. You've got these fancy strips for disability people that have these little knobs on them, and the people are supposed to maintain them. How are you going to keep the ice out of them? You are putting a burden on the people. There are 2 members on the board that do not have sidewalks to begin with.
I would love to.
So we have to be penalized because we have sidewalks. If you're going to have sidewalks, I think everybody should have sidewalks, and everybody has to maintain them. And I'm sure that most of the businesses take care of their sidewalks or whatever so that people can get into the stores. And if there's sidewalks along Washtenaw that are bad, and I'm sure they're probably Washtenaw County, and they're not taken care of, but the people that live there would have to take care of them. I think you're against the common people is what is going on here. You just have to have an ordinance. Is it to make money? Who knows what you're responsible for. The bike path, everybody wants it taken care of. That is right against the street. And if anybody hasn't noticed, when the snow plows go through, they plow the snow up on that, and that is our ice, cold, hard ice, and it's hard to get off, and especially if you're working. I am opposed to it. I have had a petition, turned it in with 300 and plus names, and just because of the heat and the time, I didn't have enough to get more. If that's what it needs, I will go out and get more. And please feel free to look at the pictures of some of the conditions of the sidewalks that belong to the township. And to take it away from the township, they say, well, it's a responsibility to call somebody that your property is not taken care of. Thank you.
My name is Joanne McCullum. I live at 1900 Tyler Road, Ypsilanti, Michigan. This ordinance, snow removal ordinance, is not equitable for the township. It's not for every community in the township. Some communities, it would work fine. Some communities, it's not going to work fine. I have a report, and you can probably read it online, the whole thing, from Washtenaw County Public Health. I'll just read bits and pieces of it. The population of aging adults is getting larger across the county. In 2015, 12.5% of the population in Washtenaw County was 65 plus years old, which is an increase from 2005, when 8.6% of the county was 65 years old, 65 years. These individuals are concentrated in specific areas. In areas that support an older population, dementia and limitations in activities will be more common. Individuals living alone may experience unique vulnerabilities and may need help as they age. Individuals living alone in rural areas may have difficulty doing errands or tending to their home. Availability of services may also be limited. In Washtenaw County, 19%, this was reported in 2016, so it's probably higher, 19% of individuals 65 plus years are living below 200% of the federal poverty level. Poverty is not widespread evenly across the county, which is why this is not equitable. An income of $990 per month puts one person at 100% of the federal poverty level. So the city of Ann Arbor, Pittsfield Township, Ypsilanti Township has the highest number of 65 years people in that age group living below the 200% of the federal poverty level. So as people get older, they're more likely to experience limitations in their usual activities and may need help to complete these activities. In Washtenaw County, 1 in 3 individuals, that's a lot, of the 65 plus years, have activity limitations, 1 in 3, due to a physical, mental, or emotional problem. And one of the things that they list on the public health is heart disease is high, and also strokes. So this is a thing with older people in that generation. They want to do everything. They don't want to ever stop doing it. And, you know, I remember my grandfather running circles around us when we were kids, because that's just the way the generation is. I think if we put an ordinance out there for snow removal, I think it would be more driving anxiety for the older people, like, oh my gosh, even though they're already doing it, they're like, oh my gosh, now there's an ordinance. Now I may get cited. I can't afford it. I don't want it to happen. I don't want an ordinance cop coming to my house, putting a ticket on my door. Let me go out there and shovel more. And these people probably shouldn't be out there to begin with. I mean, it's hard to tell people not to do things when you get older. I know that. But they're going to want to do it more. I don't want them at risk. I want something else done. You know, maybe a campaign of, you know, neighborly removing snow or something like that, some kind of campaign for that. It's not out there, so we don't know if that's not going to work or not. But I don't want people, particularly a vulnerable generation of people that is increasing in our township, to feel like they have to go kill themselves just to remove some snow. So I am against the ordinance, and I like the fact that you are looking at businesses. That's fine. But I think we should do something different for residents and to pay mind to the type of residents we have, their age, their needs, their vulnerabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do you want to take a break before the?
Excuse me, can I respond to what these people said quickly?
Yeah, you can respond to the board, but not to them individually. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I meant.
We don't want a big
Okay.
fight breaking out or anything, you know.
Okay, you have my name already, is it? Or shall I give it again?
Pardon me?
Shall I give my name again and all
Yes, the
that?
person who types the minutes, they are not in the room.
Ooh, okay, Stephen Hudak, 553 Malbech.
Thank you.
Thanks. 12.5% of people in the county over 65. Well, that means a lot more people are going to need the sidewalks cleared if they want to move around. So a snow ordinance gets to be much more important as people age. I'm all for neighbors and so on campaigning to help other people deal with their snow, but they can also do that once an ordinance is in place. And in fact, they'll be more compelled when the ordinance is in place to help the neighbors.
I think we've kind of decided to start out with a business snow ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make that.
Okay. With my signature campaign, I found that 85% of the people I talked to supported the ordinance. Finally, the point that was made about businesses not shoveling their snow, well, they don't. At least in my area, most of the businesses do not shovel their
I
snow.
know, that's correct.
So that's my observation.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
We're going to, thank you so much. Could we adjourn to take a break?
Please.
Can I just ask the board to look